Okay, ladies and gents, welcome back to the Fairway Performance Podcast. Today, I am really excited to have a guest from the other side of the pond again, and his name is Scott Fawcett. It seems every guest that I have is from the other side of the pond because I'm on the small side and you're on the bigger side. But Scott Fawcett is the founder of Decade Golf and works with many PGA Tour players, and I'll let him introduce himself. So did you want to say hi, Scott, and give us a quick bio of who you are and where you've come from?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I always enjoy these conversations and just seeing where they'll meander around. I'm a 49-year-old guy who played professional golf in my 20s. I've studied math and finance and economics relatively heavily in college, and then like everybody else, played about 6 years of struggling professional golf and just could never figure out why I didn't do any better. And then once I started playing a lot of poker, honestly, after I quit playing golf. And started playing, just expectation management and just the actual odds of playing poker. And then I just started thinking of golf more as a math game, trying to apply that mindset. Because again, I was just a lunatic when I was playing professionally. I just really started seeing golf as a black and white math game. And then once they started releasing the strokes gained statistics in 2011, I started writing some threads on an online poker forum, actually, as funny as that is. And the first one I wrote was in June of 2011, just titled "Is Drive for Show, Putt for Dough Really True?" And the data started kind of showing there's a lot of old cliches about the game that just aren't quite right. Again, I'm not coming in trying to just bash every cliche possible, but there are a number of them that just aren't correct, flat out aren't correct. So did a lot of work trying to solve course management by basically utilizing the strokes gain statistics and then essentially the size, quantifying the size of shot patterns with any given club throughout the bag. And then when it came time for me to use it back in 2014, I had an elbow injury that was going to keep me from playing golf for about 6 months. And so Will Zalatoris, who I used to have to explain who he was, I think we all know at this point who he is. He was just a junior golfer at my home course who was ranked 3,300 in the world. And so I called Will and I'm like, man, I was going to play in the Texas Am, but now I can't. Let me caddy for you. And you're going to win this golf tournament. Like, he'd never won more than a high school event. I'm like, just do what I tell you to do and just trust me on this one. And, God bless the kid. He actually really did do a great job of adhering to the strategy. And there were a number of things that I'm sure we'll get into that we focused on that week. But, he wound up winning by 3. The next month I went and caddied for him when he won the U.S. Junior here in Texas. And then just because I live in Dallas, which is where SMU is, and the SMU head coach and I have been friends since since junior golf, really, college golf. And he told me that Bryson DeChambeau, he's like, Bryson plays way too aggressively. I can't figure out how to get him to stop. And what I think you're doing with Zalatoris is something that Bryson could use. Will you come teach him? And so in February of 2015, he was the first guy that I went and taught it all to, outside of Will. And 2 months later, he won the NCAA championships in U.S. Amateur. And next thing you know, my first 2 students have kind of like flipped the switch overnight. And next thing you know, I'm talking to people in Australia about course management. It's been a funny 8 years to say the least, but it really has been fun just helping players sidestep the pitfalls that apparently, man, just golf. And again, I tend to ramble, so shut me up whenever you want to. But golf, the fact that golf is the only sport in the world that's not played on a uniform field of competition, that's really the problem with teaching the strategy of golf. If you're getting a tennis lesson, first of all, you're getting a tennis lesson on the tennis court you're actually going to be competing on. And the instructor can walk you through exact situations. You're going to see this. In golf, first of all, you're getting a lesson on the driving range. And you're hitting shots at a target that you really can't tell if they're actually functional or not. For the most part, we tend to overgrade our shots, grade our shots too harshly on the range. And then you're just kind of left to go out and figure out how to score for yourself. And, the old sayings like middle of the green and this, and like, there's just so much stuff that's just wrong. And so it's just been fun to kind of use data and analytics to wind up teaching the best players in the world. I've got 40 or 50 guys that are on the PGA Tour that I've worked with. I mean, this week in Houston, I had 7 guys on the PGA Tour finish tied for 9th or better. It's like, wow, there you go. I mean, we see all these young kids. I've pretty much worked with every single one of them out there on tour. So it's just been a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I guess the proof is in the pudding, right? 7 players in the top 9 or better ties. Wow. Yeah. That's outstanding. That's so good. Good work. It
was a good week.
Yeah, hopefully you get some sort of commission based on their results.
As long as they sell some apps for me.
Um, cool. Well, you said a lot of stuff there that I want to ask questions about, but what are some other, like you said, drive for show, putt for dough, aim for the middle of the green. What are some other things that the information and the data that you've gathered over time, what sort of other stuff have you dispelled or you think you've dispelled with the research and stuff you've done from users of your app and working with pros and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of them, like the idea that if a pin's over there on the left side of the green, that you want to kind of favor up the right side of the fairway to gain a better angle into the pin. There's no scenario, no situation whatsoever in golf that I've currently come across yet where you can intentionally try to favor a side of a fairway to gain a better angle that doesn't also destroy your scoring average. So there's scenarios where, like, I get it. If the pin's tucked over there on the left, it would be nice to be in the right side of the fairway. But by trying to shift your shot pattern over to the right side, the extreme right edge of your shot pattern is now going to be in the trees or bunkers or a house or something. And so you actually, it's just basic expectation math, weighted expectation math. And so, you can't really chase angles. The idea in putting of never up, never in, or that you have to every putt 18 inches past the hole, that's entirely false. The only correct answer, if somebody asks you how far past the hole should you hit a putt, the only correct answer is how long's the putt, for starters. And then we're going to need even more information. Again, one of the main arguments I constantly get in on social media is just about Brad Faxon and his putting statistics. Because Brad thinks, he used to hit putts so hard that he had to mark his comeback putt when he missed. When in fact he actually left. Let me pull up the exact stat here because it is mind-boggling to me, and it's the reason I die on this hill is because I don't want the next junior golfer and college golfer to hear arguably the greatest putter that's ever walked the planet say, when I missed a putt, it was going hard enough that I had to mark the putt. It was never a tap in coming back, and I'm like, there's no chance that's accurate. Faxon disagreed, said that's what I did. We go run the data on it, and from a mere 16 to 20 feet. Brad Faxon, best putter ever, basically, left 16% of his putts short. Almost 1 in 5, 1 in 6 putts he left short from inside, from 16 to 20 feet. And there's just stuff like that you just have to understand all the potential outcomes. And like the analogy of that is, if the potential outcomes, you've got a range of possible outcomes in any sort of like mathematical question. So our shot pattern in golf is essentially the deck of cards in blackjack. Now, we've got a range of possible outcomes, but you just don't know which card is coming next. And so trying to play aggressively, it doesn't work out in golf because you can't impact your opponent's play. There's just a number of things that are unique to golf. But the best analogy of that is in blackjack, if you hit on 18, there's a 23% chance you won't bust. And the whole table is going to freak out. Well, it's like a 1 in 4. It's not earth-shattering. It wasn't 1 in 60. It was a 23% chance you're not going to bust. But there's still a 30% chance you won't win the hand. And so it's like you did all this aggressive work and for nothing. And that's just where understanding the odds and trying to set the odds up in your favor in golf, like it really is just a solved problem at this point where you can do that.
Yeah, cool. No, I like it. It's and you've obviously got the evidence and the data there to back up a lot of these things that you're saying. So I love it when someone has bold claims like this, and they also say, and this is the reason why I say this or understand this, because, Brad Faxon's opinion or the way he thought about it, like the way he was thinking about his putting, obviously wasn't actually what happened because, I had a child a couple of years ago, or my wife had a child. I didn't personally have a child, but it's so funny because, like, obviously during childbirth, like, it's one of the most excruciating things that can happen, yet people go back and back and back for more and more and more, and they just forget the fact that it was like the worst possible pain ever. So that's just like a recent example for me where people just forget what the thing was actually like, and they just remember the good things or parts of it that suit their narrative.
That's a great example because, again, you just data and experience, like, it just trumps everything, like understanding how to put it together. And again, like with Faxon, it's just so funny because when I explained to him that he was wrong, rather than just saying, wow, that's really interesting, I find that hard to believe, but there's the data, like, wow. I was actually giving a presentation yesterday at a PGA teaching and coaching summit here. And one of the guys told me that Faxon's still going on about this, which I find hilarious. But
That's
apparently
cool.
he heard Faxon giving a presentation the other day where Brad says, well, they're telling me the data doesn't support what I say here, but I just think it's wrong. This is what I did. And it's like, you have to be kidding me, dude. You're still doubling down on this. It's excruciating that he gets away with it. Like, again, he literally still 2.5 years and countless arguments later is like, I still don't believe it. Okay, man, I'm going to move on.
Yeah, I believe that's the definition of living rent free in someone's head. Cool. So you've told us a little bit about your you believing in the data and using data to your advantage around the golf course. So did you want to explain how you do that with Decade Golf and how the system actually works?
Yeah, so essentially what I did back in 2013 and 14, well, rewinding it back even further than that, when I first quit playing professional golf in 2002, I started an electricity company, which really took a lot of my time for the next few years. And then I met Chris Como, obviously Tiger's eventual instructor, Bryson and Jason Day's instructor right now. I met him playing in an underground poker room here in Dallas, back in like 2005, 2004, something like that. And we were pretty good friends for like a year before we even realized we're both in golf. And then I started playing. Once we figured out that he's a golf instructor and I'm a professional golfer, I went out the next day and got a lesson from him. And he and I really put a lot of work into studying poker over the next couple of years. And that's when I started applying this poker math and poker mindset to the game. And in 2008, I got to where I was playing pretty good golf. And one of my buddies said, you're actually playing better now than you were as a playing professional. What's going on here? You're 35. And I was like, honestly, just understanding odds and expectation has just chilled me out as a human being. Maybe I'm a little bit older. I'm not as worried about money. Like maybe there's a lot of that going on, but I just understand the game more. And this is before even ShotLink, or strokes gained rather, or ShotLink, both of them. And so I really started thinking a lot more. Well, then I entered Q school as a 35-year-old amateur at that point and actually got through all 4 stages and went and kind of played part-time professional golf for a couple of years, which went about as well as you would think part-time professional golf with a full-time job would go. But that's when they started releasing the actual strokes gained statistics. And then I realized, if there's a way that I could quantify the size of your shot pattern, and again, I try not to get too mathy because I hate the big word mafia where they try to use the largest, most impressive words possible. But there's a few words you got to use. So a standard deviation is a measure of variance. So I essentially calculated the standard deviation, basically the size of my shot pattern, both directionally and in distance control. So now if you can imagine, I try to get people to think of their shot pattern rather than here's the shot I'm trying to hit. You've got 1,000 shots that are possible. So you have a shotgun blast of a shot pattern. So, but the problem with golf is you've got a shotgun blast where 50 bullets or, BBs come out. But instead of just one of those, instead of all 50 coming out at once, just one comes out and you don't know which one is coming in your golf shot pattern. But if I know because of strokes gained how many shots it takes to hole out from any given area, as a concrete example, it takes 1.5 strokes to hole out from 8 feet. It takes 2.8 strokes to hole out from 100 yards in the fairway. There's just all these just numbers that if you know exactly what it takes to hole out from the fairway, rough, sand, trees, tee box, wherever, you can start to combine these things together and basically optimize where you should be centering that shotgun blast of a shot pattern. And so that's essentially what I did. And what's really convenient, because I don't know what I would have done otherwise, a very clear pattern emerges. I mean, it is just crystal clear that you've got a certain percentage of your shot pattern that needs to be on the green. And without getting, it's a really difficult thing to explain verbally. But essentially what Decade does is gives you, rather than, again, the traditional playing lesson advice would be like, hey, this is a really difficult shot here. Let's go more towards the middle of the green here. Okay, well, what if the green's 40 yards wide? Middle of the green's probably, overkill. Number 18 at St. Andrews is a 354-yard hole, and the green is 52 yards wide. Number 10 at Pebble Beach is 510 yards, and the green is 18 yards wide, and there's an ocean on the right. Like, middle of the green is totally different advice in both of those scenarios, and actually it's wrong advice in both. It's probably too conservative on number 18 at St. Andrews, and it's too aggressive, actually, on number 10 at Pebble Beach. You should be aiming almost at the left edge of the green. And so just understanding the size of your shot pattern and how that interacts with the golf hole, which again, that's basically what we try to teach through the Decade app is based on your handicap level, how far you need to be aiming from any edge of the green for starters before taking in the surrounding hazards. And that's, again, like one of the other cliches that it's not kind of similar to the ones we were talking about earlier, but one of the main cliches I really am trying to do, not a cliche, it's just sound bites, is you've got to miss it in the right spots. And again, I've heard Tiger Woods say that 1,000 times, I missed it in the right spots this week. And I don't think that's actually the correct way of thinking of the problem. The real question in course management is not where's the place to miss it. It's how much do I not want to be short-sighted? And it sounds like a little bit of semantics, but it's really not. People just think that I'm just telling people be super conservative and hit at the middle of the green. That's not what I'm doing at all. I'm trying to get you to be as aggressive as the constraints of the shots will allow you to be. So the length of the shot, the surrounding hazards, the course conditions, the weather conditions, those are basically the 4 inputs. The lies, the ball below your feet, above your feet. Like there's a couple other things, but for the most part, weather, course, distance, and surrounding hazards are the 4 variables you want to bring into essentially the calculus of where to aim. And it sounds a lot more fancier than it is, but it just winds up being a very simple process that takes no more than 3 or 4 seconds to pick an optimal target once you know how to run it.
Yeah, and I guess that there's lots of things that come out of that. So the first thing that comes out of it is one thing that I say to a lot of the players that I play with. I'm by no means a professional golfer. I mean, I can play really well, and I've shot under par, lots of times, which is something that lots of golfers don't do in their careers or their whole lifetime of playing golf. They never go anywhere near par. But I believe it comes down to me just being really logical. So without actually doing Decade golf or having ever followed Decade golf before, I just use similar processes. Like, if I'm going to miss this one, like how aggressive do I need to be? Where do I need to leave it? What am I going to do? What is my normal shot shape? Like if I always just hit a fade, it's like, cool, I know it's going to consistently come out of fade. It's just a matter of how much it's fading or maybe turns into a slice. So just being realistic with your expectations, because so many amateurs get up and they just aim straight down the middle of the fairway, even though they know they're going to hit a left to right shot because that's what they've done the last 13 drives that they've hit that day. And they expect that this one will be different to go straight down the middle of the fairway where they're, like that's it. Would you agree with that? Like it's just amateurs, that's an expectation that they just haven't managed. And they're thinking that something will be different this time when nothing has actually changed. Like they haven't changed their swing mechanics, the ball, the driver, anything. They're just doing the same thing, expecting a different result. The other thing that I'm a big believer in, and you'll understand this fully having worked with Bryson for a long time, and Mark Brody, the strokes gained man, God, if you want to call him that, founder. He always talks about drive for show, putt for dough, and he just calls it out and says it's bullshit. It's not true because he's got all this data to say that it's not true. And when you look at the data and you read his book, it's a very compelling argument as to like just hit it as far as you can on every hole so that you have a shorter shot in, closer proximity to hole. You're going to hole more putts because you've got a higher percentage of making them. It's pretty black and white, right? But how does that play in with Decade, and how do you get players to manage their way around the course? And if they haven't gone to a course before, like how do you actually get them to do it, and how does the app help them with that?
Well, I mean, to your point exactly. Like again, I'm really lucky, honestly, that I wrote that thread on that 2+2, that online poker forum, because literally it was titled "Is drive for show, putt for dough really true?" Because I definitely catch a lot of grief sometimes of people thinking that I'm just rehashing Mark Brody stuff, and I'm like, well, I wrote that 3 years before his book came out. And again, I'm not trying to lay claim to the idea or anything because I did some really bad math. Like I didn't have access to strokes gained, so I just was like summing wins and top tens and whatever. But you can see the thought process starting to trickle in there. And as far as Bryson goes, I mean, it's just comical because like I'm the guy that told him to send it. Like, dude, you need to be hitting it further. And if you got that in the tank, let's get on that, buddy. Because back in 2015, so Bryson had won the NCAA championships already. He had not won the U.S. Amateur yet. And the Pacific Coast Amateur was in Eugene, Oregon that summer, about 3 weeks before the U.S. Amateur. And Zalatoris was on the driving range. We're just kind of screwing around here in Dallas. And he's like, I'm hitting it so bad. I'm playing so bad. This tournament's next week. I've got no clue what I'm doing. And I'm like, I'll come caddy for you. We'll just think our way around the course. You're going to be totally fine. Like I'm going to come caddy for you. And I said, actually, you're going to do one other thing too this week. Sam Clayman was just a junior golfer that played at Princeton, that was sitting there. And I knew he had, or was going to play at Princeton, and I knew he had a golf tournament that week. I'm like, you're going to go caddy for Sam this week. You're not going to sit here on the range and grind your face into oblivion. You're going to go caddy for Sam, and then you're going to hit a few balls each day, and then I'm going to come caddy for you next week. Point of bringing all that up is then in the practice round, we played with Bryson. So it was my first time to actually see Bryson out on the course. And the first 4 holes go by, and he's got his fairway finder, tee shot, which, was going 290 or something like that. And comically, he'd actually only hit the fairway twice with his fairway finder. And then we get up on number 5, and I'm like, dude, let me see the big ball. Like, let me see this one you're telling me about that goes 50 yards further. And then he literally just hit it 50 yards further on call. I'm like, what are we doing here, man? Because you can't leave that much in the tank. And I would love for that 21-year-old DeChambeau to see what he's doing now, because he literally looked at me and he's like, you can't swing that hard, because if you do it every day, you're just going to get hurt. And I'm like, if that kid he probably swung at 120 or something like that when he hit it hard, or maybe 122. But if that kid realized in just a few years he would finish second in the national long drive or the world long drive contest, like, it's insane what he's accomplished. But to your point of the overall question is, hitting the ball as far as you possibly can is the easiest way to lower your scores in golf, period. Everybody, and I literally do mean everybody, has an extra 30 yards-ish. If you haven't done any speed or strength training yet, you have 30 yards. Now, it's not free. You're going to have to put a little bit of effort in. But as far as the easiest gains in golf, the first and foremost one is picking up 30 yards. The second one is getting better at speed, control, and putting. Those 2 things alone, the game is just not that difficult. And again, I'm saying that half is a joke, but literally, if you hit the same shape every single time with the driver, and you hit it as hard as you possibly can, and then you lag putt it well, like, there's just not much left of the game. And I say you hit the same shape every time, because as long as the ball curves the direction you intended it to, it's honestly pretty hard to not have a functional shot pattern. And again, a lot of what I'm saying is for the single-digit type handicaps. I mean, as you get into the double digits, sure, we've got a lot of work to do on our golf game. But letting those double-digit players even understand, like, look at Keith Mitchell. He's a guy that I've worked with for a little bit over a year now. People think that Rory's the best driver of the golf ball over the last 5 or 6 years. Like, Keith is as good or better than him. It's either Keith or Rory that are the 2 best. But Keith is doing it without 190 mile an hour ball speed. I mean, he's in the high 170s. He hits it plenty far, but that dude does the exact same thing every single time off the drive. He hits it really high and with a cut 100% of the time. It doesn't matter how windy it is. It doesn't matter which direction the wind is. He's doing the same thing. And so getting good, back to, DeChambeau, and just understanding that the problem that people get into whenever they start trying to, like, push back on this is they're like, well, I'd rather be in the fairway at 140 than in the rough at 100. And, like, okay, I don't disagree with that, but you're not going to miss the fairway every time with driver, and you're not going to hit the fairway every time with 3-wood or with or with hitting driver shorter.
100%.
That's not how it works. You might hit the fairway 5 or 7% more of the time by hitting it a little bit shorter, by dropping back to 3-wood. You might hit it 5 to 7% more of the time, but 100% of your shots are going to be 40 yards longer. Again, that's just an expectation problem that is a bad trade-off.
Yeah, 100%. It's like when obviously barring like course conditions and the things that you mentioned before, like hitting it onto someone's house or hitting it into the water or the trees or something like that, if you're long enough and the width, your dispersion or standard deviation that you said before is wide enough that it brings that trouble into play, then obviously that's where you would dial something back. But that's following logic and statistics, right? That's not just an emotional decision that someone's like, oh, I need a fairway finder. It's like, no, let's blast it further.
Well, and this is what's funny is, like, again, like, I do look back at myself. I'm a pretty big guy to be, played golf in high school in the late 80s, early 90s. Like, most of the guys back then were smaller. I'm 6'1" and 220 right now. Like, I'm a decent sized guy, but I just never got enough experience to understand how to handle, like, I hit the ball really far, and I never understood how to to play that. And so I fell for, again, like now I sit here and laugh at some of the decisions I made, but I fell for them all also. It's not easy. And so I played in the 1999 US Open, and I remember it like it was yesterday because I hit 3-wood off the first tee. The only reason I didn't hit 2-iron is that, is a shorter par 5 for Pinehurst. I don't remember what it was, 420 or something like that. The only reason I didn't hit iron off the tee just to get it in the fairway was because I didn't want to have my first tee shot in the US Open have a hosel on it. So I was like, okay, we're going to remove the hosel, but it's not driver. So I'm going to be really smart and hit 3-wood. I striped 3-wood right down the middle, hit 8-iron to about 15 feet, 2-putted it, and walking to 2T, I'm getting confirmation. You just did that correctly. That was the smart play. And it's like, nope, it really wasn't, but I got this confirmation. So you just get this reinforcing information constantly that you did the right thing. And that hole is just guaranteed. It's a for sure driver. Send it and then see what happens and then reassess. And you just keep running that script over and over again. Unless there's a penalty hazard that's going to be in play, driver is rarely not the play.
Yeah. And I think the reason for that is when you actually look at strokes gained, you're not gaining a stroke every single hole you hit driver on, right? So if I hit driver 30 yards further than someone and I have a wedge into the green versus their 7-iron into the green, it means that I'm going to, on average, put it like a certain amount of feet closer than them. And then that increases my percentage of actually holding it. So over 3, 4, 5, 6 holes, I could equal a shot then. But I need to see it through and be consistent over those like 3, 4, 5, 6 holes. I think it's the emotion that gets in people's way because they don't see a result immediately. Instant gratification culture, Twitter and Instagram. We were just talking about this before and having a laugh at how silly we think the whole thing is. But I think because the rewards aren't immediate for them straight away. Whereas if you hit a 3-wood into the fairway, it's like immediate, like, yep, I hit that right. I got it onto the fairway. Sure, I have a bit of a longer iron in, but instant gratification, I did a good job. I think
I think Mark Brody and I were just fishing in the same pond for a long time without realizing we're both kind of working on the same problem. But I will say the man is a lot smarter than I am. He's definitely more articulate than me. And so definitely a lot of the phrasing of things that I say all the time is definitely just the way he phrased things. And I think that from the book, Every Shot Counts, he talks in there about you have to start thinking about fractions of shots gained or lost, not full shots. So if you made a birdie, you didn't just gain a shot. You gained some fractions of shots or probably a shot and change. So if you've got a par 3 with a scoring average of 3.2 and you make a 2, you gained 1.2 shots against the field. The flip side of that is also if you make bogey, you didn't lose a shot. You lost 0.8 shots. And the best way that I can explain the importance of that is I'll get tour players every single week like, it's going to take 20 under to win this week. I'm like, well, first of all, maybe. But second of all, if it is, kind of by definition, that course is going to be a little bit easier. The par 5s are reachable, maybe an extra par 4 or 2 where you're going to have like a 100-yard approach shot. It's just a little bit easier of a golf course. But by trying to go out there and shoot 20 under, again, this is a utopian idea, like of just saying the perfect mindset is we're not going to think about score at all. But if you're going to think about score, I want you to think about it in a productive way, and that's going to be in fractions of a shot. So rather than thinking I've got to get to 20 under to win on the PGA Tour, what you actually need to do is get about 12 to 14 shots clear of the field average. So when Zach Johnson won the Masters back in whatever year it was, the announcers love to go off on like he was, he didn't go for a single par 5 and 2 and, he won. I'm like, well, isn't it kind of important that nobody went for a par 5 and 2 that week? It was miserable. It was like 42 degrees. Zach Johnson, the year he won the Masters by not going for any par 5s, he didn't shoot 20 under like DJ did to win. He won by shooting 1 over par. But guess what? He was 14 shots clear of the field average. Now, when Cam Smith won the Tournament of Champions last year or this year, he was 34 under par. Oh, my God, he was 34 under. Yeah, but he was only 14 shots clear of the field average. 35 shots difference between Zach and Cam, and they were the exact same amount clear of the field average. So what we're really trying to accomplish is just thinking of, making a par on a par 3 that has a 3.2 scoring average, sure, it doesn't get me closer to 20 under, but it gets me 0.2 shots closer to 12 shots clear of the field. And so it's just a kind of a mindset set trick. And again, we're talking about PGA Tour, caliber scoring here, but it's just it's the idea same holds true against whatever competition you're playing. We want to be thinking intensive shots gained and lost, not full shots, because it's rarely the case that a bogey loses a full shot, and it's rarely the case that a birdie doesn't gain more than a full shot.
Yeah, that over the course of a round, and then obviously it loses a shot on the hole. If you're looking at it as one hole, it would lose. People see it as losing one shot, whereas if we look at over the round of golf versus the field, like we're only losing a small amount. So I fully understand what you're saying.
How do you win a golf tournament? By having the lowest score over 72 holes, over 4 rounds. Well, how do you do that? By having the lowest scoring average over each round. How do you do that? By having the lowest 9 hole, by having the lowest hole. But you can keep on breaking it down into each shot. And so like I said earlier, an 8-foot putt on the PGA Tour has a 1.5 expectation, shot expectation to hole out. Well, you can't hit the ball 1.5 times. You either made it or missed it.
Yeah.
You make an 8-foot putt, you've moved it the ball 1.5 strokes closer to the hole in one stroke. You gained a half a shot. That's essentially all strokes gained is. And then you run that same math on every single shot you played, and it will sum up to your score on that hole. Like it's pretty interesting how it works perfectly, but every single shot can be explained. Was that good or bad? I mean, 300-yard drive in the rough is actually usually still around a 0 strokes gained shot. So just send it, and it's probably not a bad tee shot.
Yeah. The only example I can think of that would be different would be Brad Faxon would lose 1.5 shots on in a 1.5 average because he'd miss the comeback because he's always past the hole, right? Anyway,
no, he never misses them. It's just all bravado. He never misses them.
Yeah, I've never met Brad, but sorry, I just had to take a free shot there. You were wide open.
It's funny because I give him a hard time. Like, it is disappointing that it turns into such a shit show. But at the end of the day, he's just trying to fight for his place in the game still. And it's like, okay, dude, but you don't realize how ridiculous you're looking by continuing to fight this argument.
Yeah. Cool. So we've talked about Will Zalatoris and Bryson DeChambeau. I also noticed on your website that you work with Webb Simpson was another player, and Stewart Cink. And I've been really impressed, particularly by Stewart Cink. It was actually a really funny, super quick story about Webb Simpson. I went down to the President's Cup in 2019 in Sydney, and all the other players, when they arrived back from the day at Royal Melbourne, they got to the casino, the Crown Casino in Melbourne, where they stay, and they get taken up this like private entrance, and all the players sort of get huddled up, out of the bus and security and stuff like that. And anyway, Webb Simpson just like ducks the line and walks out and just starts walking through the casino. And everyone's just walking around, like, not knowing who the hell that guy is. And I'm like, hey, Webb, how you going? Like, because I was the only one who recognized him out of the whole, like, group of people there. And they're
that's
like,
hilarious.
Who the F is that?
Player, yeah.
Yeah, but he's, like, one of the best golfers in the world. He's, like, what is he, like, top 50 to 60 or something? Or 40 to 50? Yeah. Like, he's crazy good. Like, massive earner and everything, just being consistent on tour. And, yeah, just no one recognized him. But,
champion.
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious. Even Tiger tells stories of him shanking it at a President's Cup or whatever. Did you see that a little while ago? Yeah, like shanked it onto the tee that Tiger was on, and Webb walked over there embarrassed because Tiger knew exactly what happened and everyone else didn't really know what was going on. But
Webb's not afraid to throw a shank in there.
Yeah. Going to Stewart Cink, I think one of the really big things with him in recent years, and he's got his son caddying for him now. I can't remember his son's name, but he's caddying for him now. Reagan, that's it. And Stewart has increased the speed of his swing. He's obviously increased how far he's hitting it. And he had, 2 or 3 wins in the last 2 to 3 seasons. He had a little stint there where he had a few wins, right? He won at the Seaside course at I can't remember what the name of it.
He won in Napa, and then he won at Harbour Town.
That's the one. The one where Cam Smith was fishing and got in trouble for fishing at the tournament.
Probably,
if you remember that, yeah. He was told to get off the golf course because he was fishing on the golf course.
Stewart's is an interesting example just because most of the players that I work with, or just college kids that had the Decade app at the college that they were in, and then they graduate on tour, and I continue supplying them with the satellite maps and everything that I lay out every week. But Stewart's an interesting example just because he's my age exactly. He's like a month older than me, maybe 2 months older than me, whatever it is. But when he won the British Open in 2009, he didn't win for 12 years after that. And if you're good enough, I always try to talk about don't focus on winning, because it's just a really rare thing in golf. A 2% win rate is actually really good in golf. That's like the equivalent of a 10 or 15 win career, just having a 2% win rate. But if you're good enough to not lose your card for 20 years, you should probably be winning at least, once every other year or so on average. And so for him to go for 12 years, it's pretty shocking that to go that long without winning while also playing pretty good golf. Well, the way I used to have my sales set up, I'd get a little email anytime somebody bought the app, and I got an email saying Stewart Cink, and I'm like, that's hilarious. And so I forwarded it to my programmer and just said, can you tell me anything about this guy's IP address? And he's replied with, he's like, yeah, it's in Ponte Vedra. I'm like, oh my God, Stewart Cink just bought my app. That's hilarious. And so I asked him then, I was like, did he watch any videos or anything? He's like, yeah, he only watched one or half of one. I'm like, that's a shame. Well, the next day he sent me an email saying, wow, he actually logged back in and watched essentially all of them, over the next 24 hours.
Wow.
And the following week was Napa, and he won. It was literally his first win in 12 years was the week after he bought the Decade app. So he had fired his caddy and was going to have Reagan come out and caddy for him. And he just said, I just literally Googled golf strategy. He was like, I was just trying to see, is there anything out there that can give Reagan a little bit of background on how, PGA Tour caliber course management works. And he's like, Decade was the first thing that popped up. I watched a couple of the intro videos, on the little salesy videos. I'm like, sounds interesting. But then where he just watched a half of a video, I tell early on, I'm like, your shot pattern with a 9-iron should be roughly this big. And he's like, good enough for me. And he went out and tested it. And he's like, it was exactly how big, Scott had told me said it would be. And he's like, that was enough to convince me there was some merit here. And so then Reagan watched all the content, and it's just hilarious to watch those two out there just doing the Decade system perfectly. I mean, again, they're literally doing it perfectly it's a little too difficult to explain, like I say, verbally how to do it without some images. But then 6 months later, he's going on to win his second time in Harbour Town, and he's just out there in the fairway doing this 4-step process as simply and quickly as physically possible. And I'm just like, it's hilarious to watch something I just kind of made up, to watch a dude who's been on tour for 25 years, a major champion, doing the process exactly. I get it. Kids need it because, we all make stupid mistakes, but to have a guy of that pedigree, actually using it, you just literally got to be kidding me. And what that comes down to is for the listeners, if you ever, play a round of golf and think I should have shot lower, there's really only one of two things that's possible. You're not as good as you think you are, or you made mental and strategic mistakes. I mean, there's just literally nothing else it can be. So when you finish these rounds of golf and think, that 3-putt on this hole was dumb, and that bogey with the sandwich was dumb, and that double, those are the shots that Decade is going to try to teach you how to see before they happen and how to avoid those pedantic mistakes. Again, the shots that make you feel like you should have shot lower is exactly what Decade is trying to target.
Yeah, cool. And that just, I guess for you hearing that and seeing Stewart go out there and have his son watch all the videos and put it into practice and work for someone who is already at such a high level, and to take them from not winning in 12 years to 2 wins within 6 months of using the system, it just goes to show how amazing it is, right? There's not much else I don't think he gained, I don't think he gained 50 yards off the tee or anything crazy. I think he just actually started hitting it harder because he knew that the stats were there to back it up. So he probably had that power reserve there and could swing it that hard and hit it that far. But for years just thought, the old adages were true, and hit it in play. And it was just the young guy's game to hit it far and blah, blah, blah. But I think, just thinking about it a little bit, I reckon it's really cool how his son watched all the videos and he has just been thrust into it, really. He'd never never caddied for a PGA Tour player or never caddied on a PGA Tour course and setup and stuff. But for his son to have that system to go to, I'm sure all the caddies on tour have their little systems for working things out, whether it's a known system for them or whether it's just something that they've come up with and they just do it without thinking about it. But having Decade as a system that they can actually go back to and they know the data's there, they can just trust it over 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds and then over 4 tournaments or 20 tournaments or however many it is a year, and just know if they just keep following it, then good results will come, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're just setting the odds up in your favor. Again, like you're just loading the deck, to keep on referring to blackjack, you're just loading the deck in your favor to where you're just going to keep on making solid decisions. I mean, honestly, the one thing that Stewart said the week after he won his second time in Harbor Town, he was on PGA Tour radio like on Tuesday or Wednesday that week, and the guys were asking him about it. And his response, which I never would have thought, and again, I've got it on another monitor, so like I have this thing memorized, but it's blah, 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 blah. I subscribe to the Decade materials just like any other member of the public. I paid for it. We've adhered to it ever since the win in Napa. It was our first go with Decade. But this is the thing that I didn't realize how important this aspect of the system is. It's not just where to aim your shots. It helps me with decision making because I don't really have to make decisions anymore. On the course, the system makes the decisions for us. It takes the mental energy that would be required to deliberate and make a decision like that, and it makes the decision for us. It keeps me fresh. It's pretty simple, and I like using it. Like, I don't think that I realize the "it keeps me fresh" part, how important that is. And so going back to like when I was caddying for Zalatoris, like I'm just sitting there making the decisions. He's just letting me play him like a video game. We both would finish the round of golf, and because we were both doing half the work, neither one of us was really tired. And I don't think that I really put it together how important that is. But like I said, I just played in Korn Ferry Tour Q School for God knows what reason a month ago. But at the end of each round, I was not tired. I mean, I was perfectly fine. Even as a 49-year-old amateur that could, be in a little bit better shape, walking those rounds, I just finished because I didn't have decision fatigue. I wasn't just constantly thinking and should I get more aggressive here or not? Or just let the system make the decision for you, sit back, turn your brain off, and then see what you shoot. And again, that's a utopian view of it, but it is possible to do that. I have, players that do it every single week, and it's fun, since I really haven't gotten to play much golf in the last 7 or 8 years, to just go out and get to actually play in some golf tournaments as I try to get my game back in shape for turning 50. It's fun to just go out and see that. I mean, again, I talk about the system all day, every day, but I don't actually get to use Decade that often. And so then to just go out and play in a golf tournament and realize like, yeah, coming down the stretch, it's first stage of Q School. I wasn't actually planning on getting through, but here I was at 7 under and right on the cut line. And I wasn't freaking out because I just understood odds and expectation, and I wasn't tired, and just run the script over and over again and see what you shoot.
Yeah, that's cool. It's I personally am, especially after this conversation, Decade is something that I'm going to jump onto, particularly because and I haven't told many people, but now obviously everyone who listens to this is going to hear, but I've entered the Australian Amateur. So that's played at a course in Sydney here this year, or over 2 courses, one called St. Michael's, which is not too difficult. I've played a lot. I really understand it. But it's on the water, super windy, OB left and right on holes, like lots of decisions, blind tee shots, like really hard, or can be really hard. And then New South Wales, which is like really hard. Like its stroke rating is 76, I believe, from the back tees. So do you use slope ratings over there?
Yeah.
So it's 139 slope rating. So it plays like 4 or 5 shots over the par. Yeah, I played there last week, and I shot 4 over the front 9, and then I shot about 8 over the back 9, just because I had no idea where the holes went. Like, there's just so many spots where it's a blind tee shot. You don't know what's over the corner. You don't know how far to take it on, all that sort of stuff. So, there was some silly mistakes, and there was also some shots I hit that were really good, and I was like, oh, man, that just, it went into the hazard, and I didn't think the hazard was there. So,
but that's one of the main things that Decade, that, again, a lot of my work allows people to accomplish is these blind tee shots. Since we're talking about Australia, you've got Michael Clayton down there, who's a great golf course architect, and Lucas McKeel, I believe was his name, that won the U.S. Mid-Am. They're buddies of mine through social media and whatever. And, Clayton likes to give me a hard time about some of this stuff. But at the end of the day, once you have satellite images, the blind shot thing goes away. Once you understand how to lay your shot pattern out, and again, that's obviously something I teach you how to do in the Decade app. But once you understand how to lay these triangles out, if you will, in a center line, then once you get to the course, you can find you can literally you can play a totally blind golf course almost as well as if it was your home course the first time you play it, because there's just the mystery is gone of like, well, like an example is number 8 at Pebble Beach is the one after the par 3 down the hill. Number 8 plays back up the hill, and there's a giant rock that they set up this hill because it's a totally blind tee shot. And historically, everyone's like, just over the right center of that rock. And I can't remember exactly what it is now, but actually, I think the center of the fairway is actually either 4 yards left of the rock or 4 yards right of the rock. But there's no way you could know that without a satellite image now. But now with satellites, you can be like, it's close, but it's not quite right. And so blind tee shots are just a thing of the past. They are just literally irrelevant. That's what drives guys like Clates. I hope Clates listened to your podcast just because I like needling him. But the whole architecture thing, like I do feel bad for the GCA crowd because there's nothing really that interesting anymore left with architecture. Now, they still have to design something. That's what I feel like they get too mad at me sometimes. I'm like, you're not going to lose your job. We still got to design golf courses. But a lot of the old tricks of the trade, a bunker, 30 yards short of the green to give you an optical illusion, like, well, rangefinders threw that out the window, 30 years ago. Satellites have now done the exact same thing to blind shots. So just all of the mystery and folklore of the game is just gone.
Yeah, I think for someone who rocks up and plays as is, like the architecture would play a lot into it. But for people who are obviously playing for a living and want to play really well, like me, and enter these like high level amateur tournaments and stuff, like obviously I'm going to do all the research I can and practice as many rounds of Decade as I can and map out the course. And I get 2 practice rounds out there the couple of days leading up to the tournament. So I'll be going out and picking my aim points and all that sort of thing. So yeah, and
That's
having
awesome.
having the data and having like played the course and knowing and having confidence in that, obviously it's where it's all going to tie together. So
I love anyone that has a large
it.
following. I mean, again, like I'm sure you don't have as many haters as I do. You're probably a little bit smarter man on social media than me. But anyone who has the guts to be in golf instruction in some form or fashion, and then has the balls to be like, well, let's go post a score and see what happens. It's tough to do, man, especially like me, if you dig as big a hole as I do sometimes to like, I'm going to enter Korn Ferry Q School. Like, really, what good can come from this? Only bad. But it's fun. You got to challenge yourself. And, the way that I look at it is anybody who enjoys somebody doing poorly, well, like, they're not your friend anyway, so screw them. And anybody who is your friend or supporter, they're just happy to see you try. So I think that's really cool, man.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
don't overthink it. Again, like this is now a therapy session, but don't overthink it. Don't over prioritize. Don't make it bigger than it is. It still is just golf, because what you don't want to do is get out there and get off to a shaky start, maybe a bogey or 2 on these tight holes. And then all of a sudden you start like pressing to get it back. And next thing what you could have grinded out like a 73 or 4 on a hard 76 rating course, you turn into a 79. And it's like, I didn't need to do that. If I could just go back 30 minutes, I'd do that differently. And that's just not how the world works, unfortunately.
Yeah. Having logic and just playing with logic has been something I definitely do in tournaments. But, practice rounds with mates, like, if you're 260 meters out on a par 5, like I'll hit driver off the deck just to give them a laugh because I can actually do it and they can't. And, just things like that. But like they're clearly not the good play, but it's, with mates, it's having fun. Cool. Now, we've obviously talked a little bit about how Decade works and the professionals that use it. I want to learn a bit more because obviously all my listeners are not professional golfers who are shooting under par and playing really well. There's a lot that are very good golfers because they obviously take their fitness seriously and they're trying to find tweaks and ways to make themselves play better. So obviously interested in improvement. So how does like a 10, 15, 20 sort of average, actually what even is the average handicap? Around 15 for most golfers?
I have no idea, honestly, what an average handicap would be.
Yeah, I'm just assuming it's that.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Decade is definitely designed for better players. But I consider better players to be like just single digit and better. That's obviously above average. But also, I gave a couple presentations yesterday down at a couple of different conferences here. And the one thing that I'll say is even the 20 handicap, the best analogy I've come up with this is, since I had COVID, I've been having a bunch of heart and blood pressure issues. While I'm wearing a continuous heart monitor right now. Yeah, it's not ideal, but I'm still not a cardiologist. I can't even say the word. I was about to say cardiovascular surgeon. I'm not a cardiologist, but over the last year, I've had to do a lot of research and learning and meetings with doctors and everything. So, like, I've gone from a 20 handicap cardiologist to probably like a 6, only by having conversations. I still haven't gone to school or anything. My surgery skills would probably be that of about a 30, but I understand a lot more about how these great cardiologists think. The 20 handicap, like, just understanding how the best players in the world think and how they see certain problems, it can't make you worse. And so the 15 plus handicap, I don't expect them to actually learn the decade system, but you do need to get in there and learn, well, how's my scoring average going to improve? It's going to improve by avoiding doubles and bogeys far more than by making more birdies. Even once your scoring average gets into the 70s, as your scoring average improves from 79 to 76 and 76 to 3 and down to 70, basically 75% of your improvement in scoring is from avoiding bogeys and higher. Well, how are we going to do that? We're going to do that by driving a little bit better, by putting a little better. So all of the ideas, I do believe, are applicable to any level of player. And then once you start getting down to the 10 handicap range is when you're really ready for, like, the full decade system and understanding the math of target selection. You know, I don't want the 15 handicap out there grinding over target selection. They need to be having fun. They need to be working on their ball striking, and they need to understand the principles of how their scores are going to lower. They're going to drop their scores. And so really I do, again, I hate doing this because I feel salesy saying stuff like that, but I do believe that it really helps anyone. If you can shoot about 90 or better, you're not going to get worse. I mean, the way that we track stats in the Decade app, when we've got the foundations version, which is basically the entry level version, and we take the first 3 scores that somebody enters into the stats portal, and we treat that as their benchmark, which obviously any individual might have bad results in this just because it's such a small sample size, but over thousands and thousands of users, this math is going to hold pretty true. So the first 3 rounds entered is your benchmark. If your average score was over 80, so like call it 82 to begin with, we don't have course ratings. We don't have all that stuff in order to be able to calculate an actual handicap, you know, what tees they played and all that stuff. But we just take it relative to 72, just using a static number. And for those people that average score was 82 to begin with, their scoring average drops by 34% over the first couple months. So they drop basically 3.5 shots over a couple months just by watching some content. I mean, and literally 100% of our users improve, which is crazy. Like, you can't get worse.
Yeah, that's so good. And there's so many reasons that would be the case as well. Like taking emotion out of it and putting logic into thinking your way around the course is going to serve you better, because it is a numbers game essentially. But the real benefit that I see to it is like the mental load that you're talking about before. Like, a lot of these people are having to think about, like, oh, if I miss it this way and this way and this way and this way and this happens or hit it fat or thin or whatever, it just takes a lot of that out of it, because they're like, okay, cool, like, this is my median shot. This is sort of my target line. This is what I need to do. Give them steps in the process. And then by the 14th, 15th, 16th, and up to the 18th, they're a little fresher mentally, and they're still sticking to the system. So they're probably, reaping the benefits there. And it's taking away some of the doubles or the wipes if they're playing Stableford. It's taking some of those away, which I see, 20 handicappers who start following this, I see that they've got so much more room for improvement. Just like someone training in the gym, right? Like, for me, I've been training, I'm 35 now. I've been training in the gym since I was like 15 years old. So I've been training for 20 years. So for me to get really sore and tired from workouts, I've got to do a pretty strenuous session with heavy weights. And that's fairly technical because I've been training for so long. Whereas if someone's just starting out or they're at a lower training age, they can literally just touch a barbell and lift it 10 times from the floor to their waist, a deadlift, and they'll wake up the next day and go, holy shit, my back and hamstrings and everything's sore, like they have very, so much room for improvement, whereas I've got such little room for improvement. So I think if anyone's
34% improvement for a guy averaging 74 is not the same as a 34% improvement for a guy averaging 90, just in absolute strokes. So Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the percentages are the same, which I bet would actually probably be similar to you, but it just takes a lot different effort. Like, well, it's just
Yes.
at any skill, when you're getting to the elite level, which obviously you're at the elite fitness level, improving is just hard. I mean,
Yeah.
but getting 2% better is still getting 2% better.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, the percentage, but 100%. um, cool. I posted up a couple of a story this morning and just asked users. I've had a couple of or not users, followers to just submit questions. So one of the questions is what are 1 to 2 mistakes from all the data that you've gained over the years or you've seen with amateurs? What are the 1 to 2 most common mistakes that you see the 10 or 15, 20 handicapper make when they start using the app that this app helps them iron out and stop making?
Definitely making too many double bogeys from the trees. That's
Okay.
the depending on obviously your course, but people just try the most ridiculous shots from the trees. It's really comical. On the PGA Tour, from 100 yards in the trees, they average 3.8 shots to hole out. So they're basically making bogey on tour 80% of the time.
Yeah.
And then
Wow.
we're going to get these amateurs that get in the trees and they're like, ooh, I've got a perfect opening. I'm going to funnel this up there and get a 15-footer for birdie. It's like, dude, just don't make double. And
Yeah.
trust me, the rest of it's going to work itself out. Now, I get it if you hit the ball in the trees 14 times off the tee, like it kind of sucks because it's like I'm going to shoot a billion, but well, we need to work on our driver there, not our punch out game. Like nobody punches the ball out of the trees very well. And so the first and foremost one is, and again, like this is definitely something that's been said for years and years and years. We just now have data to back it up. Get it out of the trees in one shot, like period. And then beyond that is just from outside about 15 feet, just try to two-putt it. I mean, again, like Zalatoris is I love the kid like a son, but obviously he struggles on short putts a little bit. But what's comical to me about the announcers giving a hard time, like this is where he gets a little bulky on a 4-footer. It's like this average is 3% worse than tour average, 89 versus 92%. Now he's 170th from 4 feet, so I get it. As a ranking, it sounds really bad, but he's 3% worse on something. You have 2.5 3 to 5 foot putts a day, and he's 3% worse at them. So if you're 3% worse at something that happens 2.5 times a day, it's less than 1/10 of a shot. I get it. It's not ideal. It's like 7/100ths of a shot. I get it. It's not ideal, but it's also not the end of the world. It's the end of the world if you let it freak you out moving forward. But so then how is Zalatoris able to actually be a positive strokes gain putter on the PGA Tour while being effectively, the worst in the league from at every distance inside of 10 feet? It's because he has the best speed control on the PGA Tour. He was second in approach putt performance last year, which is the average length of your second putt. So here's a kid that basically, I'm kind of making this up, but also not. Once he gets outside of about 15 feet, he just wants to tap the next putt in. And he's just going to be happy if the hole happens to jump in the way of a putt, which is how he's able to not be very good inside of 10 feet. But then once you get outside of 15 feet, he actually winds up being in the 40s and 50s for make rates. So now he's gaining every time he makes a putt, he's gaining like almost a full shot because the putts he makes have a much higher initial value. But then paradoxically, even though he's not very good from 3 to 5 feet, his 3-putt avoidance rate is actually very good because he lags the ball so well, he taps in constantly. And that's the thing that's just funny about it. Like after he lost the playoff to Justin Thomas at the PGA this year at Southern Hills, we talked the next week and I was like, guess what shot I want to ask you about? And he literally is like, I know what shots you want to ask about. I'm like, which one? He goes, the putt on I think it was 16 when he 3-putted. He had about a 25-footer and he hit it about 5 feet past. He was like, I just kind of lost my mind a little bit there. He's like, I felt like I really needed to make something coming in. And it's not like I tried to make the putt, but I lost my presence of mind of just trying to lag it close and let the hole get in the way. And then he missed the comebacker. And it's like, well, that's the exact one I wanted to ask about because I just wanted to know. And I'm not judging, you're trying to win the PGA Championship, man. It's really hard to do. I get it. And he just, this one slip of focus, basically cost him. And it's just crazy how simple that happens. So the amateur at home, getting it out of the trees in one, and then just working on your speed control and putting. Like, speed is all that matters. I mean, it literally is all that matters in putting. If you can put good speed on it, you're gonna be fine.
Definitely. You don't have all those comebackers like Brad Faxon has from having to market. Cool. The next question. This will be the last question I want to ask. But in terms of strokes gained off the tee, strokes gained with irons or approach to greens or wedges even, and then strokes gained putting, where do you see the same amateur golfer? Where do you see them make the most improvements when they drop their handicap? Because we know they drop their handicap by 34%. Do you know where they're starting to make those improvements the most?
I don't, but I would hazard the guess that it's pretty proportional. And again, that's gonna be a very personalized question. I understand you're like, well, on average, what's the answer? On average, the answer is probably it's pretty proportional. But for the most part, yes, there are some players that hit the ball great and putt terrible. But that's the outlier. There's some people that hit the ball terrible and chip and putt the ball great, but that's the outlier. For the most part, if you're a 10, you're just like, and I'm making this up to some extent, but you're just like, there's 4 strokes gained categories: tee shot, approach, around the green, and putting. You're just kind of 2.5 shots worse than the tour at all of them, or than a scratch would be, I should say. Mm-hmm. So, but the real key is, and like the definition of improvement is actually gaining strokes against yourself. So in the app, we let you select your peer group. You can compare against the PGA Tour, the LPGA Tour, top 100 college, top 100 world amateur rankings, top 25 college, Power 5 college rankings, scratch. Like, you can choose whatever you want. But I always tell people, just compare against the PGA Tour because it's the most robust and accurate stats, data set that we have. And then you're really just looking for trends in your own game. So even if you're a 15 handicap and you're -6 strokes gained putting against the PGA Tour, it's like, oh my God, that's terrible. It's like, well, you're a 15. Of course it's terrible. But for you, can we get it to -5? To losing 5 strokes? That's improvement. You're getting 1 stroke better. So I just tell people to not really get lost in the weeds too much there and just look at their own strokes gained numbers. And again, you'll see, wow, out of, I'm losing 10 shots against a PGA Tour player and 6 of them are off the tee. Does that match your intuition that, maybe I should be a little bit more conservative off the tee, more aggressive off the tee? I mean, the one other thing that I'm just going to back my way into saying, because I have to say it on every podcast, is with the driver specifically, working at one direction and one direction only is absolutely the only way you can play this game well. Trying to work the driver both ways is an absolute fool's errand. And the best players on the PGA Tour by far, I shouldn't say best players, the best drivers of the golf ball by far only shape the driver one direction. And you see Rory kind of wrestling with this some, like he'll make some comments like, I'm going to stick to the fade. And he's like, oh my God, I'm going back to, I think he tends to chase his tail a little bit, but he's a freak of nature. So the guy can kind of do some things that other people can't. But on average, the best drivers, the Brooks, the DJ, the Keith Mitchell, for the most part, they just shape the driver one direction. So that's the main thing I would actually tell amateurs to really focus on is shaping that driver one way, tending-ish towards the middle of the green, but I hate saying that, and then lag putting well. And then don't miss the green with chip shots. Like, how hard is that?
Yeah. And I guess, like, stemming from what you've just said there, like if if you're comparing those 4 stats and you see yourself, strokes gained putting 2.5 worse than the PGA Tour, strokes gained around the green -2.5 against the PGA Tour, irons approach to green is even with the PGA Tour, and then drives is -5. Obviously, that's going to inform when we need to practice more, right?
Exactly.
We need to get the driver in our hands, start working towards, hitting that one shot shape and just doing it consistently, doing it really well. And then hopefully maybe you get a little worse with irons into green, but your driver has more room to improve. So we go down from 5 shots lost on the against the PGA Tour field to maybe 2.5, but then our iron goes to 1 worse than the PGA Tour when it was at 0 before, and the other 2 stay the same. We've made a net improvement in our handicap. We've gotten better overall. So I think one of the things that we do, and sorry to take a little tangent, but one of the things we do with clients in the gym when we run fitness retreats is we look at our life as a bit of a circle. We've got 5 points on this circle, and we call it the wheel of life. Essentially, we've got like finances, we've got relationships, we've got health and fitness, we've got career, and all these other aspects. So
straight Tony Robbins. I love it. Trust me. Don't worry.
Yeah. That's essentially where I got it from. Yeah. And essentially, if we're looking at a score out of 10 of each of them, we want to be like pretty proportionate in each of them. Even if we're not a 10 in everything, we want to be pretty proportionate so that we're well-rounded. If we're not, and we're a 10 in finances, but a 1 in relationships, then obviously we're going to have a golf simulator in our house like you. But we also are going to have a real flat spot there, which is not giving us fulfillment or whatever. So if we look at that in a golf sense and we have those 4 points to it, if one of them is, really significantly lower or significantly better, then it informs where we spend a little less time practicing. Still practice it. We need to make our strength and our go-to and to lean on it. But also we need to put some more work into other areas. And for me recently, learning that my long irons and strokes gained into the green has been terrible. Like playing off a handicap of like 0 to 1, and I'm only hitting like 9 or 10 greens around. It means my driving is really good. I hit it further than average, sort of 300-yard average. I'm hitting poorly into the greens, but I can chip and putt really well. Like I chip, one in a round, or every other round I'll chip in. I can chip it close and putt in, or if I've got a long putt, I can make some birdies or 10, 12 footers for par if I need to save it. So really focusing on my long irons and dialing that in. The first round after I did that and spent some time in the nets just working out my dispersion and how far I'm hitting it short and long and wide, I went and shot 3 under. Like it was crazy. Like I hit like 13, 14 greens and easily got under. There was no, I had like 5 birdies and 2 bogeys. Like it was easy.
But this is what's funny is like you put the effort into the right areas. This is again like my canned statement about, if you feel like you should have shot lower every time you play, you're either not as good as you think you are, or you made mental and strategic mistakes. Nobody wants to accept they're not as good as they think they are, which is usually about half of the problem. But after that, we just do the same dumb stuff every single day. And that's looking back at myself as a professional golfer in my 20s. We would go to the Outback Steakhouse. Yeah, you go Aussie. We would go to the Outback Steakhouse and just talk about all the dumb stuff we did every day. And then I would never think about it again. Like, how can I stop doing that? I just thought magic was going to like fairy dust and I would just magically stop. You've put the effort into the right areas. And that's just what's funny to me is like some of the grief that I catch. I'm like, well, what's your plan for improving if you're not going to use decade air quotes? Because it's not going to just happen. And so you've done a great job of recognizing where your strengths and weaknesses are. You're clearly a more mature young man than I was at your age. So, kudos. But that's the thing is that giving structure to that process is just, again, I hate being a snake oil salesman. It's a guaranteed way to lower your scoring average, which again, it's just fun shooting lower scores. I don't care who you are. And it's not fun shooting higher. It's not fun feeling like you waste shots every day. And so trying to help people all around the world stop doing that, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I love it. And I can't wait to get stuck into it and getting into all your content and then, hopefully shooting a decent score at the Oz Amateur and not
don't overthink it.
Not embarrassing myself too much.
Don't worry about scores. Don't worry about scores. Just worry about the process.
Yeah, I honestly don't care what I shoot. Like, I'll just be so happy to be there because I'll be one of the highest handicappers there. Not a plus marker. Like, I'll be very lucky to make the field, but it's looking like I will at the moment. So,
cool.
I'll release this this podcast after that, so no one listens to it and gets the idea to go in it.
Trim out.
Yeah. Cool, mate. We'll leave the questions there. I don't want to go too much longer. I've already used up a fair bit of time, but did you want to point people in the direction of your Twitter handle, of your Instagram handle, anywhere that they can get your free content, your paid content, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, at this point, it's pretty easy to find. If you just Google Decade Golf or Scott Fawcett, Fawcett, you'll find it. I'm definitely trying to shift over to Instagram more, which is this decade_golf. And, I've got a YouTube channel with a bunch of free content out there. Like I really do try to provide a lot of free content to get, the 80-20 analysis. Get people who are just looking to shoot a little bit lower scores, get them on their way. And then if you really want to dig in deeper, just decade.golf or in the app store. Like I say, you'll find the app in there, and it's a very simple process after that.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, mate. Yeah, I hope a lot of people, because I know there's a fair few serious golfers, and I've got young professionals and a few college golfers, like sort of 16 to 18-year-olds, or high school to college age, from America, following my fitness program. So I hope if they haven't already got it in their colleges, invest in this also as another tool which will help them. So one of the things that I actually saw, I think it was a quote from Will Zalatoris. He said, it was 25 years of learning course management in 5 days working with you. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was the text he sent me after he won the Texas Amateur, that first win in 2014 that kind of got him heading in the right direction. And I sent him a text afterwards, just like, hey, I forgot to, it was our little canned joke for the week. We're not going to talk about winning until after the tournament's over. And I had this game plan the whole week of when he pulled the ball out of the 72nd hole. I'd been like, it was going to say, you can relax now, buddy, you won. And I totally forgot because I'm trying not to cry like a baby in front of everybody. And so when I was leaving the parking lot, I sent him a text and just said, oh, I forgot to tell you, you won, you can relax. And he did. He replied with saying, he'll never be able to know how to thank me, but I've given him 25 years of experience in 5 days. And it is honestly, like, it's just, all of this really is an accident. Like, I feel like that's why I'm comfortable talking about how good it is, because like, it wasn't intentional. I just kind of backed into something that really works. I didn't realize I was filling a hole, a giant void in the game. But at the end of the day, and I'll end it with this, because I do think that this is important. I'm not saying young people are dumb. I am saying, though, that young people do not have a fully functioning brain. The prefrontal cortex is the last area of the brain to finish developing, and it is essentially the part of the brain that synthesizes all of the other areas together into a coherent decision. And so if you are a teenager or a guy under the age of 25, a girl under the age of about 23, and you're like, I make a lot of bad decisions in general in life, not just on the golf course, and I don't understand why. Cut yourself a little slack. Your brain literally is not capable of making good decisions. That's why you make better soldiers than Sean or I do. We're a little bit older. We're like, hey, they're kind of firing bullets at you out there. That's a bad idea. And an 18-year-old's just going to go storming out into the battlefield. They can't make good decisions, and golf is just on that continuum somewhere. So what decade, again, the system allows you to do is just make good decisions, even though you don't even have a brain yet. No offense.
I like it. That's a great place to leave it. So thank you, mate. We'll leave it there. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.